There is a person who knows everything about you: your full name, your date of birth, your mother's maiden name, the name of your first pet, the street you grew up on. For most people, that person is themselves. For me, it was also someone else. My name is Diana. I am 44 years old, and for 20 years, my best friend Andrea had been using my name, my history, my identity, to build a life I knew nothing about. Not a small thing, not a borrowed detail, a complete, parallel existence, constructed from everything I had ever told her in 20 years of absolute trust. This is that story, and I want to be very clear before I begin. I'm not telling it with anger. Anger left a long time ago. What I am telling it with is the hope that someone listening will recognize something before it costs them 20 years. Andrea and I met at 14. First day of high school. She sat next to me in English class. She borrowed a pen. She never gave it back. I always said that was the most Andrea thing that ever happened. She was magnetic in the way that certain people are magnetic. The kind that makes you feel, when they turn their attention to you, like you are the most interesting person in any room. We were inseparable within a month. By 16, she knew everything about me. My family, my history, my fears, the things I had never told anyone else. That is what you do at 16 when you find your person. You hand them everything. You don't think about what someone could do with everything. Andrea came from a difficult home. A mother who moved frequently. A father who was absent in every way that mattered. She had no stable history. No consistent paperwork. No clear record of herself before the age of 12. I understood that as a wound. I did not understand it then as an opportunity. Not for her. Not until much later. After high school, we drifted, not dramatically, not with a fight. The way that life drifts people. Different cities, different paths, different rhythms. We stayed in touch. Birthdays, holidays, the occasional call. I moved to Portland for work. She moved, she said, to Denver. I visited once in 2009. She seemed well, happy even. A small apartment, a job she didn't talk about much. I didn't push. That was always our dynamic. I shared everything. She shared selectively. I had accepted that about her a long time ago. What I had not accepted, because I did not know, was that in Denver, Andrea was not Andrea. She was Diana. My Diana. She had been using my full name since 2003. My date of birth. My social security number. Obtained, I later learned, from a document I had let her hold during a joint apartment application that fell through in 2002. One document. One moment of ordinary trust. 20 years of consequences. I found out on a Tuesday morning in 2023. A phone call from a collections agency, chasing a debt in my name from a credit account in Denver that I had never opened. I assumed it was a standard identity theft case. A stranger. A data breach. The kind of thing you report, resolve, and move on from. I filed a report. The investigator called me back 3 days later. She said, "Ms. Diana, the account was opened in 2008. The address on file is in Denver. The emergency contact listed is you. Your current address, your current phone number." I didn't understand. She said, "Whoever opened this account knew your information completely, including details that wouldn't be in any data breach. Your mother's middle name, your childhood address, the name of your elementary school." I sat very still, and a name rose in my mind before I was ready for it. Andrea. The investigation took 4 months. What they found, I am still in some moments unable to fully absorb. Andrea had used my identity to open 11 credit accounts, to rent 4 apartments, to obtain a driver's license in 2 states. She had applied for jobs as Diana, had been hired as Diana, had references, real ones, who knew her as Diana. She had built an entire professional life under my name, a life that was, by most measures, more successful than the one I had built under my own name. She had a career I had always wanted, a salary I had never reached, a reputation in her industry that people, when they Googled, found connected to me, to my name, to my history. I had spent 20 years building something quietly, and someone had been quietly building something louder with my materials. The investigators asked if I wanted to press full charges. I sat with that question for 2 weeks. Before I answered, I called her. I don't know why. Some part of me needed to hear her voice, needed to give her the chance to say something, anything, that would make it make sense. She answered on the second ring. She knew immediately. I could tell by the silence before she said hello. The long, specific silence of someone who had been waiting for a call like this for a very long time. I asked her one question. Why? She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Because you always knew who you were. From the very first day I met you, you had a name that meant something, a history that held together, a family that stayed. I didn't have any of that, and you were the closest thing to it I'd ever found." I didn't say anything. She said, "I know that's not an excuse. I know what I did. I just wanted you to understand that it was never about hurting you. It was about trying to be something I didn't know how to be on my own." We stayed on the line for a while, neither of us speaking. Then I said goodbye and hung up. I pressed charges, not out of anger, out of necessity, because the financial damage was real and required a legal resolution. Andrea pleaded guilty. She received a suspended sentence and 5 years of probation. I have not spoken to her since the phone call. I don't know if I will. What I think about, more than the betrayal, more than the damage, more than the 20 years, is that conversation. You always knew who you were. I have turned that sentence over many times, because the painful truth is, I'm not sure she was wrong. I did always know who I was. I had parents who told me. A home that held. A history that made sense. Andrea had none of that. That doesn't excuse what she did, but it explains the shape of the wound she was carrying, long before she ever borrowed a pen on the first day of high school. I am not her victim. I refuse to be defined by what she took. What she took was real, but so is everything she couldn't take. My actual relationships, my actual memories, the actual life I have lived inside my own name. Those are mine. They were always mine. And unlike a credit account, they cannot be opened by someone who simply knows the right answers. If something in this stayed with you, leave it in the comments. I read every single one. And if you are carrying something you have never told anyone, you are in the right place. I'll see you in the next one.